All right, we're going to turn now back to what has been a very busy day of international news, and helping us is joining us, President of the Council on Foreign Relations, Michael Froman. He previously served in the Obama administration as the United States Trade Representative. We have a lot to get to. We're glad you're here, Michael. But let's start with, as you review the year in foreign policy for your latest piece on Substack, and you write this. When Trump was reelected president last year, many Americans believed, for good reason, that he would chart an isolationist course for the country. But one of the biggest foreign policy surprises of 2025 might well be that, 1 year into this term, Trump has not only eschewed isolationism, but established a new brand of American internationalism with Trumpian characteristics. Indeed, it's hard to be an isolationist and call for the acquisition of the Panama Canal, Canada, and Greenland. That's nothing if not international engagement. So, Michael, we'll turn to some of the hot spots in the globe right now in a moment, but let's start there. This idea, first of all, there's a belief that President Trump is interested in reestablishing a sphere of influence in the Western Hemisphere, but also just that he has been far more active in in his approach to foreign policy than a lot of people who thought they were voting for America First would have believed.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, he's gone on more foreign trips and seen more foreign leaders over the course of this first year of this term than most of his predecessors. And he is, as by his own count, he's been engaged in trying to resolve, 8, 9 disputes around the world, negotiate trade agreements, engage now in sort of domestic issues in other countries, whether it's the way Christians are being treated in Nigeria or white South Africans are being treated there, or most recently, as you had a discussion earlier, about what's going on in Iran. And so he is very much engaged as an international president, using the power of the United States and his personal diplomacy as key tools of this new internationalism.
Michael, let's talk about the latest news out of Venezuela, because it does look like there could be a bit of an olive branch coming from Nicolas Maduro, who seems to have made the decision that he wants to try and stay in power, whatever it takes. And this offer of opening up Venezuela's oil reserves to America. Do you think that's something that's going to fly? Can he pull that off? Can he stay in power by becoming a friend of Donald Trump's? And if so, would that be seen as a victory for Trump's pressure campaign to date?
Well, the president certainly has gotten President Maduro's attention by the bombing of these boats, and most recently the CIA alleged attacks on the dock in Venezuela itself. You know, the U.S. companies have had a long relationship with the oil sector in Venezuela, and it had been previously very much open to the U.S., and U.S. companies continue to operate there under a license at times. And so, yes, it is very possible that that he could give the U.S. a role there, perhaps an increased role. Whether that's enough to keep Maduro in power remains to be seen. This is something that President Trump worked on during his first administration, and I think he feels it's unfinished business. He's been careful not to say that he's calling for regime change, because if it doesn't happen, he doesn't want to look like a failure, and he can claim it was all about interdicting drug smuggling boats. But at the end of the day, you don't need 15% of the U.S. Navy deployed to the region to intercede with a few boats. He's doing something much more significant there, and it'll either require a significant change in policy in Venezuela or the removal of Maduro himself.
Michael, how do you look back on President Trump's interventions in Ukraine? And tell me how you analyze that. I mean, clearly he sided with Putin in many ways. On the other hand, it's been reported that CIA cooperation on intelligence has helped Ukraine in important ways. Is he playing both sides of the street here, or really is he trying to muscle Ukraine into some sort of ceasefire that surrenders the country's sovereignty?
Well, I think long term, he sees a stronger relationship between the United States and Russia as being in the United States' interest, and has a lot of interest in the economic opportunities that might hold. But he's deeply frustrated that Putin continues to frustrate his efforts to bring peace to that conflict. And Putin and Zelensky are sort of competing with Trump to demonstrate that the other one is responsible for being the obstructionist, that they are operating in goodwill. Right now, Zelensky, I think has the upper hand, but we've seen that the president can change that perspective very, very quickly. And we'll see what happens now as the plan gets presented ultimately to President Putin and whether he's able to accept it. It's unclear, if you look at the Venn diagram between what Putin is willing to accept and what Ukraine is willing to accept, it's a very small area. And this 95% agreement or 90% agreement that President Zelensky talks about, agreements of this sort, complex agreements, when you negotiate these sorts of agreements, you get to 90 to 95%. That means you're halfway there, because it's the last 5 or 10% that are the most difficult. And right now we're talking about territorial issues and we're talking about security guarantees. And those have always been the most difficult issues. And it's very unclear that President Putin has moved in the direction that the Ukraine and the United States and Europe currently seem to be in.
Right. Even if Ukraine and the U.S. are nearing an agreement, and to your point, a long way to go even there, we have no sense that Putin is willing to settle for any sort of end to this war, at least no time soon. Let's now